All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going deep into the world of DAX, specifically the calculatable function.
Oh, yeah, calculatable. That's a good one.
Yeah, and I know this can be a little intimidating for some people. Like when they see DAX, they just kind of like, oh, no, not more formulas.
Right.
But stick with us because we're going to break it down and make it, dare I say, even a little fun. Maybe.
It can be fun, I promise. I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's really powerful.
So let's start with like just the basics, right? What is DAX? Why do we care? What is it doing for us?
Yeah, so DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions, and it's basically a language, right? It's a formula language that you use in Excel and Power BI to create these custom calculations. So it's like going beyond your SIM and your average, your basic Excel formulas that everyone kind of knows, to do some really, really interesting things with your data.
It's like SUM on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. It's like SUM, but with a brain. You can add logic to it, you can add conditions, you can filter things, you can group things.
So we're moving beyond like, your basic arithmetic into like data algebra.
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. Data algebra.
Okay, and within this world of DAX, there are tons of functions, right? But today, we're zeroing in on calculatable. Why? Calculable.
Well, it's one of the most powerful functions in DAX, and it's really useful because it allows you to create a whole new table based on an existing table in your data model. So you're not changing the original data, you're creating a new table that is filtered, sliced, diced, however you want it, based on certain conditions that you specify.
So it's like a virtual table almost. It doesn't actually exist in your spreadsheet, but it's created on the fly.
Exactly. And that's really important because it keeps your original data clean and it gives you this flexibility to kind of play around with your data, to analyze it in different ways, to create different views without messing up your original source.
And I think that's something that trips people up a lot when they're first starting out with DAX, is they're so used to working with their data directly in the spreadsheet. But DAX is kind of like this layer above that where you're manipulating the data in a more abstract way.
Absolutely. And calculatable is a great example of that because it's not just changing values in a cell, it's actually creating a whole new table with its own set of rows and columns. And you can then use that table for further calculations, for visualizations, for all sorts of things.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the power here, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts. What does this formula actually look like?
Right, so the syntax is pretty simple. It starts with the function name, calculatable, and then you have two main arguments. The first argument is the table that you want to filter. So this is the name of the table in your data model that you're working with.
Okay, so like sales data or something like that.
Exactly. And then the second argument, or actually you can have multiple arguments here, are the filters. So these are the conditions that you want to apply to that table to create your new filtered table. And the filters can be all sorts of things. They can be simple comparisons like, sales greater than a certain amount, or they can be based on other tables in your model, or even on measures that you've created.
So it's like saying, take this table and then only show me the rows that meet these specific criteria.
Exactly. And the real power of calculatable comes from the fact that you can use multiple filters and you can combine them in all sorts of ways. So you can have like a filter on sales amount and then another filter on product category and then maybe another filter based on a date range. You can get really, really granular with the kind of data that you want to extract.
Okay, so we've got the table that we're working with. We've got our filters. What else?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. We can also use something called filter modifiers. And these are like special functions that allow you to further tweak how those filters are applied. They give you even more control over the filtering process.
Filter modifiers. Okay. I feel like this is where things could get a little hairy.
It can be a little bit mind-bending at first, but once you understand the concept, it actually makes a lot of sense. So imagine you've got your table, you've got your filters, and now you want to maybe remove some filters or add new filters on top of the existing ones, or even change the direction of the filtering, like how it flows through your data model. That's what filter modifiers allow you to do.
Okay, so it's like we've got this basic filtering mechanism, and then the modifiers come in and give us all these extra knobs and dials to fine-tune it.
Exactly. They're like power tools for your filtering.
I like that. Power tools. So what are some examples of these filter modifiers?
Okay, so let's start with a simple one. Remove filters. This one's pretty self-explanatory, right? It basically just removes any existing filters that you have on the table.
So like a reset button.
Yeah, exactly. It's like clearing the slate and starting fresh.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else? Then you've got modifiers like all except and all no blank row. These are kind of a family of modifiers that allow you to selectively remove filters from specific columns or from the entire table.
Okay, so these are a little more nuanced.
Yeah, they're a bit more specific. Like, all basically says, ignore all filters on this table, while all except says, ignore all filters except for this specific column. And all no blanco is like a special case of all, where it removes all filters, but also excludes any blank rows from the table.
Okay, so it's all about getting super granular with what filters we want to keep and what we want to discard. What about adding new filters on top of existing ones? Can we do that?
Absolutely. That's where Keep Filters comes in. And this one's a lifesaver when you're building complex calculations. So imagine you've already filtered your table down to just sales for a particular region, and now you want to add another filter on top of that, maybe for a specific product category. Keep Filters lets you do that without affecting the existing region filter.
So it's like layering filters on top of each other.
Exactly. And that's super powerful because it allows you to build up very specific views of your data step by step.
I like it. Okay, so we've got removing filters, we've got selectively removing filters, we've got adding filters on top of existing filters. What other tricks do these filter modifiers have up their sleeves?
All right, now we're getting to the really cool stuff. There's a modifier called user relationship, and this one lets you temporarily activate an inactive relationship between tables in your data model.
Wait, hold on. Inactive relationship. What does that even mean?
So in a data model, you usually have these relationships between tables that define how they connect to each other. Like a sales table might have a relationship to a product table, and that relationship tells you which products were sold in each sale. But sometimes you might have relationships that are inactive, meaning they're not being used in the current calculations.
So they're like hidden pathways in your data model.
That's a great way to put it. And user relationship lets you activate one of those hidden pathways temporarily so you can perform calculations that wouldn't normally be possible.
Okay, now that is powerful. It's like unlocking hidden insights that were always there in your data, but you couldn't access them directly.
Exactly. And then finally, we have the cross-filter modifier, which is kind of the most mind-bending of them all. It lets you change the direction of filtering between tables or even disable the relationship between tables temporarily.
Whoa, hold on. Change the direction of filtering. What does that even mean?
So normally, filters flow in one direction from one table to another based on the relationships that you've defined. But cross-filter lets you change that flow or even turn it off completely.
So it's like messing with the fundamental laws of your data model.
Kind of, yeah. It's a very advanced technique, but it can be incredibly useful in certain situations where you need to perform very specific types of analysis.
I could see how that would be a power user kind of feature.
Definitely.
All right, so we've got this whole arsenal of filter modifiers, and you're telling me we can combine them with calculatable.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. You can combine different filter types, different modifiers, all within the same calculable formula. You can create these incredibly complex queries that are tailored exactly to the insights that you're looking for.
Okay, my head is officially spinning, but in a good way. So basically, Calculatable gives us the power to create these custom tables from our data, filtered exactly the way we need, and these filter modifiers are like a set of precision tools to make sure we get exactly the insights we're looking for.
That's a great summary.
But I have to be honest, this is a lot to take in. What are some of the common pitfalls or challenges that people might run into when they're first starting out with Calculatable?
Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming at first. One common mistake is forgetting to specify the table name in the first argument. It seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how often that happens.
Right, because you're so focused on the filters and the modifiers.
Exactly. And another challenge is understanding how the different filter types interact with each other. It can be a bit tricky to get your head around the logic, especially when you're dealing with multiple filters and modifiers.
And then there are those limitations with direct query mode.
Yeah. That's an important one to mention. So direct query is a special data connection mode in Power BI that allows you to work with large data sets without having to import the data into the model. But it also has some limitations in terms of the DAX functions that you can use, and Calculatable is one of the functions that can be affected by those limitations.
So it's important to be aware of those limitations. But I think the main takeaway here is that Calculatable is a super powerful tool. And even if you're not using direct query, it's still something that you should definitely have in your DAX toolbox.
Absolutely. It's one of the most versatile functions in DAX. And once you understand how to use it, you can really unlock the full potential of your data.
All right, so for our listeners out there who are ready to dive into the world of Calculatable, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
I'd say Don't be afraid to experiment. The best way to learn DAX is to just start playing around with it. Create some sample data, build some simple calculations, and see what you can do. There are tons of great resources online, including the official Microsoft documentation that can help you get started.
And I would add, break it down into smaller steps. Don't try to write a super complex calculatable formula all at once. Start with a simple filter, then add another filter, then try a modifier. It's like building a house. You start with the foundation, and then you gradually add the walls, the roof, the windows.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. And the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with the syntax and the logic. And before you know it, you'll be writing DAX formulas like a pro.
Exactly. And remember, the whole point of DAX is to help you answer questions about your data. So start with a question that you want to answer, and then use CALCULATETABLE and all of its amazing features to find the answer.
Well said. And on that note, listener, we encourage you to go forth and calculate all the things. What data mysteries will you unlock? What insights will you uncover? We can't wait to hear about your DAX adventures. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.